Let's go back to Roger Casale in Florence in Italy, former British Member of Parliament. Roger, people are very, very quiet. We've heard while the coffin was being moved from Balmoral Castle to Edinburgh and then from St Giles Cathedral being brought back to London, a few moments of applause. People haven't been exactly quite sure how to show their combination of grief and appreciation, but the British do this extremely well. I mean, everything that we're seeing is almost the epitome of Britishness in terms of the tradition and the ceremony and the way the people are behaving so perfectly. They say the British are the best people in the world for queuing, and we saw that during 4.5 days of hundreds of thousands of people queuing for hours and hours and hours. One lady apparently did it twice. We've had celebrities, David Beckham, we've had a former British Olympian, Dame Kelly Holmes, just standing there amongst normal people because they wanted to play their part and do their service as far as being representatives of their families, which is what David Beckham said to a member of the media who said, "Why are you standing here on your own?" He said, "I had to do this. I'm representing my family."
Absolutely, as Adnan, and I think with queuing, certainly for the British, I don't know about everybody else, it's not just about the destination, what you're queuing for. It's also about the journey. It's about, as you've said, it's about being in the queue. It's about being with other people in a very straightforward way, in a very simple way, and sharing that moment, sharing that experience together. And yes, we're seeing a lot of traditions, but I think, as I said before, you know, the key to understanding the success of the monarchy is that it can renew itself. So I think when it comes to traditions, you need to think about what are the traditions that are going to go forward with you into the future, and what are the ones that perhaps you need to change. And I think the constant thing is underneath that, and not the traditions so much as the values that underpin them. And I think if you have values that are people connect with, and you're able to communicate that in a simple way, whether it's from the throne or whether it's having a cup of tea or whether it's in the queue, then that brings the nation together. And I think that's what she was able to do. And if I may just say so, I mean, I think part of the reason that so many people are there in a respectful way and silently watching this, even people who perhaps are not particular fans of the monarchy, but nevertheless respect who the Queen was and respect the somberness and the importance of this moment in the life of the nation. The Queen has been our constant backdrop. It's not just that she's on the passports and the postage stamps and the banknotes. I remember as a child, you know, after Christmas lunch, we would be keen to open our Christmas presents, but we weren't allowed to open our Christmas presents until we'd seen the Queen's speech, which was always on Christmas Day. And so she's been part of our lives, every family's life in the UK, whether wherever you're from, wherever you're going, whatever you think about the monarchy, she's been there. And I think people want to be there for her today. They want to be part of the backdrop to her send-off, just as she's been to the backdrop of their lives. And for me, that's what's impressive. It's this connection still between the Queen and the people, even as her coffin passes through Whitehall between our eyes. People feel that connection. There's something about her that is to do with us, and people feel that. And it's a big challenge now, I think, to take that legacy forward. But it will be just as much about the people as it will be about the institution of the monarchy. And Charles will have to move with the times, not in a hurry, not in a rush, but the institution will need to evolve to maintain that bond, that deep bond between the the constant values, the enduring values that certainly have the Queen in her personal values and the way she discharged her duty put on display, and the people. And that will be the key to its long-term success.
It was 1977, Roger. I came to the United Kingdom for the very first time. My father needed to go into a bank. The bank teller gave me a 50p coin, and I told him that I was a coin collector, and he said, "Well, you'll really like that one." When I got back to where we were staying, I looked at it. It was a 50p piece to mark the Silver Jubilee of Elizabeth. Yeah. And I've still got it to this day, and it's still one of my most prized pieces of my collection. And I speak to you now as a 54-year-old, still proud of having that coin. But at that age, I was only 10 years old. I didn't understand what the Queen's position in the world was. Just take us back to 1952 and then 53, acceding to the throne and then the coronation in 53. The world was a very different place to what it was today. How difficult a moment was that for Princess Elizabeth as she became Queen in those years following the war?
Yes, it must have been extremely difficult, and I'm sure she had very good advisors, and she rose to the occasion magnificently. And of course, one of the challenges one of the things that was in her in tray was the whole question of the relationship with the Commonwealth and decolonization. And of course, when she did come to power in 1952, 53, well, not she come to power when she came to the throne, because of course it's a dignified role. It's not a political role that she has so much as a symbolic one representing the nation. When she did come to the throne, she was the head of state, the symbolic head of state for, I think it was 57 countries now around the world, and now it's 17 because of decolonization. I think that's a process that she started, she presided over. It's been, on the whole, a peaceful process, and I think that will continue. And I think today we remember that not just about letting go of states, letting states becoming independent. It's also about how we deal with the legacy of colonization and how we bring people together in our own society, how we build a society based on values that everybody can identify, wherever you're from, wherever you're going, whatever your race, color, or creed. I think that whatever your sexuality, I think that's the big challenge that we face today compared to 1952. So, but she made a success of that. She presided over a historic period of decolonization. And I think we must ask ourselves, what will be the legacy of King Charles over the next 30 years? What is the comparable challenge that he faces during his reign? And I think for me, that's what it is. It's about dealing with the legacy of colonization now and building a stronger, more diverse, cohesive society.
Yeah, I must say. Yeah. Sorry, Roger. I mean, political leaders in those countries which are still members of the Commonwealth and now have King Charles as their head of state, they've all been asked that same question, and we've heard answers from the Australian Prime Minister saying now is not the time. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern saying that certainly not during my time as Prime Minister will there be any sort of referendum about possibly becoming a republic. Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean very quickly saying within 3 years we will have a referendum to decide whether we want to keep the British monarch as our head of state. And I'm glad you mentioned the Commonwealth, because in this procession that we're seeing here, we do have members of the Commonwealth. I believe that every single country that is part of the Commonwealth, not all of them, a few of them are not former colonies, but they've decided to be a member of this grouping, that they are represented in some way or another, either in a procession or in some sort of formal role during the whole process that's taking place during the funeral for the late Queen Elizabeth. Can that really be sustained going forward, given that the world is a changing place? Whatever King Charles wants, it's going to be those countries in the Commonwealth that are going to make their decisions. But a day like this can only concretize the minds of people who are in those Commonwealth nations, surely.
I don't think anything will happen very quickly, and I think it's entirely understandable that the Australian and New Zealand Prime Minister spoke in that way. It's certainly not an issue for today. But I think when you invited me to comment on this in the long sweep, against the long sweep of history, and I think in that context, we will, over the next 20, 30 years, see changes. But as I've said, I think that's much more about building stronger democracies, building more cohesive, diverse, equal societies, and not necessarily the big political issues, as you've said, about who is the head of state. I think that was certainly what happened during Queen Elizabeth II's reign. That was the news of the day. But I think the challenges are different today. But they are there. And I think when we look back in 20 or 30 years' time on what has happened next, I believe that is the biggest challenge. It is how to. It's going to be all about building a stronger, more diverse, more equal societies in Britain and around the world. And I think yes, King Charles will and the institutions have a role to play in that. They have, and it comes back to what we were saying about their values and how they communicate. And there may be some traditions and some things that they need to let go of, just as the Queen Elizabeth II has done. But I don't think that will happen quickly, and I don't think it will happen in an abrupt or in a difficult way. But I think the process of change and evolution will continue, and the monarchy will have to move with that, move with the times, and adapt. And I'm sure that it will, just as Queen Elizabeth II did. I think the point about today is celebrating her legacy, but it's an invitation to us also to look ahead and think about what would be the best way for us to honour that legacy going forward.